Good morning. Good morning, all of you, and welcome to this traditional meeting. We've done this for years. It goes back decades, and of course, it goes back in the old days to Vespers. But it's a really wonderful tradition in which we recognize great scholarship. I want to two quick comments. One is I just want to thank and congratulate all of you involved in the Sustainability Week project. That's fantastic work. I know there's a lot to do. There's more coming ahead. We're going to have an amazing school meeting on Thursday. But congrats and shout out and thanks. Let's give them a round of applause for all those that worked with Ms. Borkin. Great stuff. As I told you last week at Assembly, this is the 3 days where we've had the visiting committee here coming to help with our accreditation and to look at our self-study. And a number of them are standing in the back. These are really busy leading educators. They've given up their time to serve Taft and to help Taft. So I'd like to recognize and thank them for all the work they've done. And I know many of you have had conversations. So well done, and thank you to that committee. So what are we here for? Well, we are here obviously specifically to recognize great scholarship, right? That's the goal of this specific meeting. But I would to look at recognize the ranking scholars in the classes, and also to induct into cum laude the ranking senior scholars. But I would also argue that more generally what we are doing is, I think, continuing an ethos that marks this place really special. And that is that there is a culture of celebration here that I'm very proud of. A belief that high achievement is something that we all can take pride in and raises all of us. A sense that, and a belief that passion and talent and excellence are intensely contagious. That is, when one person is successful, others become successful as well. And that, to use a metaphor, that my climbing the ladder of success means not that I've stepped on your fingers to hold you down, but indeed that my hand has gone down to help raise you up. The sense that all of us are made better by high achievement. And I think that's a rare ethos, and it's in your hands to be able to continue that and create it. Now, to offer some thoughts about scholarship, you've probably had in recent days conversations with your teachers about your academic habits. You may have met with them formally, perhaps you've gotten feedback informally about your planning and your persistence, about your ability to engage in learning, about your ability to regulate and have disciplined habits. And as a faculty, we really want you to be self-conscious about that. That exercise is aimed to help you reflect on what it is to be a learner and on the habits that you need to have. Now, I want to offer a different way into that question, and it's something I think about a lot. As some of you know, if you've been in my office or in an advisory, I have a pile of business cards on my desk. And by the way, they don't have my name and title. They are cards that looks like this, okay? They're cards I use with students. I pass them out like some cheap car salesman, and I give them to anyone who will take them. And the card has 5 questions, as you can see. And if you're an advisee, you probably have one, or you've had a conversation, or if you've just come by my office and I've asked, how are your classes going? I've probably asked these questions. You maybe couldn't even get out of the survey. I know there are 2 students who couldn't get out of the survey this morning without me asking these 5 questions. And I persist because I care, and I'm like the rest of the faculty, I'm not going anywhere. And we are going to hopefully ask you to think about these 5 questions all the time. Now, the card has one goal. The goal is to help you reflect on what it takes to be a good learner. And now look at those 5 questions, okay? Here's my first question about them. Do they seem reasonable? The answer is, of course they do. It seems reasonable to ask those questions. Is it reasonable to say that my goal is that every day for each class I can answer yes to those 5 questions? I would argue, yes, it is reasonable. The second question would be, is it achievable? Well, I would argue they are challenging questions, but I think they're achievable. And if you use those consciously and intensely, I think that they can help you become a successful learner here. So let's take them on one at a time very quickly. All right, the first question is, did you get to class on time? Now, 99% of Taft students answer yes to that every day, but not 100%, because we know that there are moments where you were late because you were talking to a teacher, you had a tour, you went to the wrong class. But by and large, I would argue this is the easiest question, but it's a critical one. Right? It's fair for a teacher and for your peers to expect that you will be at class on time. So 99% of you say, I can answer yes to that pretty easily. Second question is a little bit harder. Did I have all the necessary materials? The calculator, the iPad, the correct book, a pen and a pencil. I would argue that probably each of you, and I've asked this question so many times, say, yeah, actually that's not that hard. I have gotten to class on time and with the necessary materials. I would note, by the way, that younger students answer this sometimes, if they're honest, they say, actually not all the time, because becoming a student takes those habits, and you have to learn how to have the right book or the right assignment or what have you. The third question gets a little harder. And think about that. Notice there's an italicized word. And ask yourself honestly, did I today, or when I think back on yesterday, did I get to class on time with the necessary materials and the work completely done? Not, I'm going to make it look as though I did that last problem so the math teacher thinks I did it, but actually it's really hard so I didn't want to take the time to do it. That's not doing it. Or you skimmed the last 2 pages of that AP Euro reading because it was so dense, you were getting tired and bored, and you pretended to do it, and you maybe made a few annotations. So that question gets harder, right? Did I have the work completely done? Every bit of it. Did I really work hard to do it? And an honest answer often is, you know what, I didn't quite manage to. I did in 4 of my classes, but one of them I was so tired, I didn't quite do it. Now the fourth one gets even harder. And this one I really, you might argue, is the most interesting of all. Was I prepared and eager to help in the learning of others? That is, did you go into the class with that sense of a responsibility that learning only happens if we are invested in it for each other? And what does that look like? Well, it's contributing in discussion. It's maybe even acknowledging someone by name in that discussion. I think that point that Jay made is really interesting, but can I qualify it slightly? Or it's raising your hand and saying to the teacher, can you stop for a minute? Could you stop for a second? I need to understand how you went from that step to the next one. And that's a question that everyone wanted to ask. So did you try to help in the learning of others? And then the last one, TAF students are honest and they often say, Ms. Mack, this is hard. Were you emotionally, physically, and psychologically prepared to learn? That is hard, isn't it? How many of you feel really tired today? Yeah. It's really hard. And it's hard for faculty. As faculty, we use these questions of ourselves. Or maybe it's not just that you were tired because you had an away game up at Deerfield, you came back, you stopped at the Burger King north of Hartford. By the time you got back, it was 8:30, it's 8:45. You didn't get all your work done, you fell asleep on your bed, you woke up, didn't have time to, but also it can be psychologically. You've heard news from home that's troubling. You have a grandparent who's ill. You're preoccupied with a relationship. You got in a fight with your parents on the phone and you went to bed feeling lousy, right? You're feeling a level of stress that makes it hard to be functional. So all of those make it very difficult. So the questions get harder as they go along, but they are all reasonable, and each of you can answer yes to those. So let me summarize it. They're reasonable questions, but they're very challenging. Reasonable for us as faculty, but challenging for us. They're eminently feasible. That is, you can achieve them. And the practice of reflecting consciously over and over again on actually asking yourself these questions, pausing at the end of the day or at the end of the week to ask those questions is a really, really good exercise. And it makes you understand yourself and it helps you understand learning. So what I suggest is ask these questions honestly of yourselves. Be willing to recognize where perhaps you couldn't answer yes. But imagine this. Imagine if at the end of the day, you could say, you know what, I can basically answer yes to each of these questions for today. You'd go to bed feeling pretty darn good. And then ask this, what if at the end of the week, you could look back on the week and say, you know what, by and large, I can answer yes to these questions. That's a really good week in a place as challenging as this. You would go into the weekend feeling, I have done a lot, because we know how hard it is to answer these questions. And then here's what you should think about. What if in the day you graduated, you look back on the body of your work and you were able to say, my experience at Taft was in answering yes to these 5 questions for the entirety of my experience at Taft. That would be a career to celebrate and be proud of, and it would be one that made you better and also made the school better. So think about those 5 questions. If you'd like to talk to me about them at any time, yeah, I'll even hand out these cards. like a cheap car salesman, and I hope that they're helpful for you. And with that, I will turn it over to Academic Dean Mr. Clifford, and we'll recognize some of the amazing academic achievements here. Okay?
Okay, we're going to start with recognition for National Merit Scholarships. The following students received commendation from the National Merit Scholarship Program for their outstanding performance last year on the PSAT, finishing in the top 3.1% of all test takers. Riwen Raymond Bai, Aditya Balsakar, Christopher Bravo Ibanez, Samantha Chan, Elizabeth Louise Gagnon, Mina Hollick, Isaiah Jones, Zach Mariani, Lauren Pelosi, Isabel Postmontour, Ben Roberts, Lee Sharpless, Macy Toppin, and Daniel Yee. These students were semifinalists in the 2018 National Merit Scholarship Program for their outstanding performance last year on the PSAT, finishing in the top 1% of all test takers. Haley Barr, Hyunsu Stephen Cho, and Yejin Kim. Okay, next for the ranking scholars. These were the ranking scholars at TAF for the 2016-2017 academic year with the highest unweighted averages in their classes. Please stand when I call your name and remain standing. For the class of 2019, with a 95.3 unweighted average, Sierra Ouellette. For the class of 2018, with the 96.5 unweighted average, Malcolm Belaires. And for the class of 2017, we already got him up here on the stage, with the 96.5 unweighted average, Hyunsu Stephen Cho. Okay, and now the cum laude inductions. Founded in 1908, the Cum Laude Society is the National Scholarship Society in secondary schools, corresponding to Phi Beta Kappa and Sigma Xi in colleges and scientific schools. A maximum of 20% of the senior class may be elected into membership in the Cum Laude Society. This morning we will induct 15 members of the class of 2017 who merit inclusion in the society based on their academic records for both their middle and upper middle years. At this spring's graduation, this first group will be joined by other seniors whose selection will be based upon their records from their upper mid and senior years. The 15 students inducted this morning represent the top 9% of their class, with weighted averages that for those 2 years ranged from the lowest being a 97.1 to the highest of 100.0. Will those being inducted into cum laude please come forward when I call your name? Yiming Corinne Bai. Mr. Matt will give it to you. Matthew Caruso. Hyunsu Stephen Cho. Elizabeth Louise Gagnon. Mina Hollick. Yejin Kim. Magdalena Kishelinska. In absentia, Benjamin Laufer. He'll be back from the mountain school in the springtime. We'll give it to him then. Next is Benjamin Roberts. Lee Sharpless. Emma Stone. Macy Toppin. Portia Wang. Juliana Yamin. And Daniel Yee.
Congratulations to those scholars and the ranking scholars. But also, I just close with that note that we began, that to recognize achievement in others is to make us a better place. And every one of you elevates the work of each other. Never forget that to celebrate others and what they do makes us a better place. And so I'm really proud of all of you. We are adjourned. Have a great day.